So apparently, when we started the series, the idea was that we were going to see potential players who could maybe represent African countries at the World Cup. We start with Ghana because, I'm Ghanaian and there's lots to go into and talk about it. Now, apparently, everyone, how should I put this? Which players are likely to come and join? The answer apparently is yes. Apparently, everyone is up there and ready to join. So, as of this recording, very important to say, as of this recording, we have the likes of the Iñaki brothers, so Iñaki and Nico Williams, who are at Bilbao, who are saying they are willing to accept a call-up. We have Callum Hudson-Odoi, who is reporting saying is switching. We know that he's not eligible to play, but he's there. Eddie Nketiah, who we had spoken in our other video, has switched his nationalities and will be willing to represent Ghana. And as early as today, we're recording this the week ending May the 14th, Tariq Lamptey feels like he is willing. According to some sources, there was an interview, Joy FM in Ghana, and they said, yeah, this player is interested. Now, what does this mean? Oh, not to mention Leroy Owusu, who played Dutch youth, so Dutch U17, U20, Netherlands, and then is currently was born in the Netherlands, playing at Willem II Tilburg, but he is working on his paperwork. He's mainly a right back. Oh, this gets interesting. But let's get to the wingers. Let's get to the wingers because the wingers are where this gets interesting. And this is where the interesting conversation starts off. Guys, this is Quetty from the Africans. We do primarily Canadian content. We're covering African content as we build to the World Cup. We want to talk about some of the African teams and what they could look like. We already covered the strikers. Let's talk about the wingers. And the wingers are where this gets fun and interesting. Now, what I said in the first video, we're going to keep this there. We are going to keep the Ayew brothers as wingers. It's very important to me that the Ayew brothers stay as wingers because I think that's their best position. Also, I think, yes, some people may say, Andre is in the best form. Yes, he's in the best form in the Qatari League, and yes, as we saw in the African Cup of Nations, yes, just because wherever you play doesn't matter, sometimes knowing how to score matters. And the fact that we have a player like Andre Ayew who's available, I think you can always turn to him in a need. But I don't think we should start with that option. I'd rather have my veterans be the players I turn to in moments of distress versus my youth. So I'd rather start with the youth and then go there. So in this case, I'm keeping the Ayew brothers as wingers. And that's very important that I set that up here in case you missed that in the last video or in case you're watching this for the first time. It's very important to do. I am looking at the Ayew brothers as wingers only. So let's talk about the wingers, and now we can take the squads that were brought up beforehand. Now, if we look at the squad that was brought up beforehand, we can see that there were some interesting winger names. Now, they didn't have access to Andre Ayew because he was suspended for that game thanks to yellows and reds accumulated at the African Cup of Nations. But the wingers that Otto Addo brought in, he had Isaku Abdul Fatawu, he had Osman Bukhari, he had Joseph Pancil, Yao Yabo. Now, he had Jordan Ayew listed as a striker, but I think he's far more effective as a winger. Now, players who were missing from this, but very important to note, Kamaldeen Sulemana, a very exciting winger, which I think will add. And I think that's an interesting player. And then you had Tariq Fosu, who wasn't there, Emmanuel Jassi, who was called up last year, Eugene Ansa in other competitions as well. Then you have Ejimin Boateng and Daniel Afriye. And then Kamal Sawa, Osman Bukhari, we said, Samuel Owusu, and those were some of the wingers brought up. So here are the players. Now, since we have other players coming in, other options, it's, man, this gets very interesting, and this is where we have to start trimming. Let's be very honest. So the first winger I would have here is, I think, the winger that we are all expecting to be representing Ghana here. And that is the one that hasn't played yet, but we expect to be able to play, which is Callum Hudson-Odoi. A little bit injured, came up with a new haircut. Interesting. I see no correlation. Maybe it's a new chapter for him as a player. We don't know. But Callum Hudson-Odoi as a winger for Ghana is an exciting, interesting thought. Because what it does now is it does open up the reality of having a very strong, two-pronged wing attack with a player who is comfortable pinching in maybe and coming in as either a secondary striker to support whoever that striker is, or an adept winger as well. And looking at his stats for the year, he has definitely had a good year. He's had 15 appearances in the Premier League this year, 1 goal, 3 assists, a few injuries. He's played right winger, he's played left winger, he has played in the midfield. So a little bit of fluidity that he can come through. However, what's exciting is just the pace that he provides, as well as his technical ability. Having a player like that pairing off with our other winger that we're going to bring up, which I think I'm excited that being able to have these two players play together would be very interesting. And you have all those Club World Cup, played a few times, EFL Cup, 3 appearances, played well. But I think for Callum Hudson-Odoi, him starting off the right winger provides some support, good with aerial crosses, good with getting balls in, can be greedy, and you don't mind that sometimes with a winger, especially playing simply with one striker, having him support. The second winger we'd want to bring up is a winger who wasn't able to play but is slowly getting back into form, playing for his club out in Ligue 1, and that is, of course, Kamaldeen Sulemana. I think a player like him is a bit controversial for some Ghanaians. You either love him and how he plays, or you think he's a bit too greedy and should look for other players. And I understand how you could see it one or the other way. But I think having both him, Kamaldeen, as well as Callum Hudson-Odoi, that's a lot of youth. Both players, 20 years old. 20 years old, turning 21 this year. And then Callum Hudson-Odoi already at 23. 21. Turning 22 this year. He'll be 22 at that time. So youth. This is exciting for Ghana, as it's youth who are playing at high levels who can really come through. Now we look at Kamaldeen Sulemana. 20 appearances for Rennes. Stade Rennes really well. 4 goals, 2 assists, 3 yellow cards, and been in 31% of the starting 11s. 8% of the goal participations he's had, 31% of the minutes. When he plays, he plays. Again, he's been able to play all across the attacking trident, whether that be left winger, right winger, or, importantly, as a striker. So you have some flexibility. So I think having a thing like that does help. And having those two, I think, both add pace, both add flair, both add that extra thing that you need on the wing. And I think it was something that was missing, especially against Nigeria, having the players come through and really create on the wings. I think having explosive wingers, but also technical wingers who can create, really opens up. So those would be who I would start off. Now here's where it has to get interesting in terms of who is the depth. Now, maybe he's the first player off the bench. Maybe he ends up starting over one of them. I don't know. But I think the next player that you have to include here is Dede Ayew, the skipper, the captain, playing well at his club in Qatar. But the captain for Ghana has played well. And I think this is where we'll get to the controversial aspect. I don't think he needs to start. I think it's interesting if you don't have him start, because I think it becomes a controversial decision. But I don't think you need Dede Ayew to start. This year, in his season, he has 15 goals, 1 assist, and 21 appearances. Now again, not to take anything away from him, he's playing at Al Sadd, and he's definitely at a rate you can feel and see it. Yes, goals are goals. There's nothing you can do to deny the fact that goals are goals, and we won't take anything away from that. However, a player of his ilk isn't a bad player to be able to lean on to say, hey, we need to create something in a game. That's why he is my first winger off the bench. He's primarily a left winger. He can play striker. He can play as a right winger. He has played a little bit also in the attacking midfield. But for me, I think the best place for a player like Dede Ayew is first player off the bench. I know this is it's a take. It'll be controversial. But I think Dede Ayew, first player off the bench, is the spot for him. I think what he can provide some steadying aspects there, or he can be that player who you bring in if you're chasing the goal lane in a game and say, hey, maybe Nketiah is not doing it, maybe Williams isn't playing well, maybe Finalizing hasn't performed well. You can always insert him as a winger and either have him play invert and come up, or play him as a winger and then drop down another player in the striker role to connect more and play off of and build off with the central midfielders and the attacking midfielders, allowing your wingers to becoming those two strikers. So then you can have maybe a situation where it's Kamaldeen and another player. Again, these are just thoughts coming through my mind, guys. Tell me how you feel about that. But we will continue to build off of that. So I think Dede Ayew being the third winger, or in the first winger off the bench, would be my choice. Now, when it comes to other wingers, the next one who I think has to be included. Now, we can include players such as the likes of Nico Williams. Now, Nico is interesting in the fact that he is definitely open to it. Now, this is of course contingent if he does come in. But a player like that, again, another young player with pace, right winger, playing at Bilbao and really looking to come into his own. Been having some appearances with the club, but nothing really that would tell you, hey, this is a moment that we're really excited for him. He's had 33 appearances, 4 yellow cards, usually always used as a substitute. Pace. Lots of pace this player brings. And I think having him there could be an interesting outlet and option for the Black Stars when they get to the World Cup. Now, I have him there, but this is really, with Nico, this is where we start to get to conversations. Who is playing well, or who fits what Otto wants to do. Now, again, he went to a back three against Nigeria, and I would not be surprised if a back three is something he wants to use as his permanent strategy at the World Cup. Meaning, you have midfielders, but then more than likely you're pushing your fullbacks up to be wingbacks. And then that leaves your wingers up there. So think of overlapping with that, right? If a Tariq Lamptey, for example, I saw, for example, Dede Ayew. Dede Ayew was called up and performed well for what he was asked to do. But you could also see the technical squad saying Dede Ayew is good, and we know he can give us a shift. But can we find someone who can give us what he does, but then can give us that shift for maybe a little bit longer? Instead of a 40-minute shift, maybe a 60-minute shift, maybe a 70-minute shift. But we'll get to the wingbacks/fullbacks when we get to them. It goes interesting. Now, of the players who were called up during the matchups against Nigeria, you have Abdul Fatawu. I think he ends up making the squad. Just went to Sporting CP in Portugal, very much well adjusted and well encouraged. He's a player that I think, from a potential aspect, you want him around this type of an environment, especially going through his phase of trying to build up and make a senior squad at a club level here. I think having him around players like the Iñaki brothers, Williams brothers, having him around players like Kamaldeen or Callum Hudson-Odoi, I think that only helps him. Then you get to players like Osman Bukhari, who's had a good season, Joseph Pencil, or Yao Yeboah. I think Yao Yeboah might be the player who gets pushed out. I think he definitely has the ability, and Yao definitely can give you that shift, but I think Yao Yeboah ends up getting pushed out of this group, and then you have 4 or 5 players. So we've gone through Nico, you have Andre Ayew, you have Kamaldeen, you have Callum Hudson-Odoi. Now for me, the player that's been brought up, it's been a mainstay, stalwart in this team, has been Jordan Ayew, and I think he also gets pushed out. This is just me speaking personally. I would rather have an Osman Bukhari or a Joseph Pencil or a Yao Yeboah over a Jordan Ayew. I think they offer a little bit more in terms of pace on the wings. I know Jordan has his defensive work, which is great, but I'm going to the World Cup. We're not going to lose. We're not going to defend. Yes, you need to be able to defend, and those players have shown the ability to do so. But we're trying to put pressure on the opposition as well. I think players like Joseph Pencil and Osman Bukhari might give us better options in doing that. Now, is there any players that we maybe are missing? It's very much possible. It is very much possible. If you look at the players that were brought into the squad last year, right? Wingers, left to right wingers, right? We have Tariq Fosu. I think he's definitely a name to keep an eye on in terms of making the squad. Emmanuel Giassi, who is playing at Spezia, definitely a player to keep an eye on as well. Tariq Fosu also, who's playing at Brentford, so just to keep those for the clubs. And then Samuel Owusu, who is playing at Al Fayha. I think he could be an interesting name to keep an eye on in terms of what he can do and how he's developing. And then we have other players who are just there. Kamal Salah, who honestly got called up and is interesting. Another Ghanaian player playing in the Dutch league, and I think as a primary winger, he's on loan from Club Brugge, and I think that's interesting, especially if you look at it from a Canadian standpoint. He's a winger, right winger, and then you have Tejan Buchanan, who came in and is playing there, so it'll be an interesting competition to see those two maybe fighting for minutes next year and seeing what they're able to do. But guys, those are some of the wingers that are interesting, and we're going to try to do this every Monday again and get back on the schedule. But guys, are there any other wingers that we are missing? Do you think we should be adding players? Is there a don't sleep on player? I know some of you have been posting your full squads and benches on the channel as well as on the videos. Continue to do so. But from a Ghana perspective, what players do you think should be? What wingers would you have? Which wingers do you think I've forgotten? Who do you think can come out? Who are we sleeping on? Let us know in the comments below. And guys, we're going to continue the series as well. So continue to come back here every Monday. We're going to be talking a little bit about African teams. We're going to finish off with the midfielders and defenders next week. Midfielders, actually, we'll do midfielders and center backs next week. And that'll be an interesting video to look at with some interesting names of players who are seemingly interested to come and play. Guys, this is a question from the African saying bye-bye for now, but let me know, who are the wingers you think Ghana could and should be bringing to the World Cup? Bye-bye for now.